This video is all about how you can take a band that plays contemporary worship and start to incorporate influences from gospel music in a way that feels authentic, natural, and that doesn't require insane amounts of skill for you to get started. So here to have this conversation with me is Seth Putnam from New Life Worship, and we're gonna break down a song from their new album to help us get into this topic. So Seth, what song are we gonna be talking about?
All right, the song is called Awaken the Anthem. And this is a really fun one to play because not only are we starting kind of in this contemporary, modern type of sound, but we slowly evolve into more of a gospel-like sound towards the end.
Right.
But the fun part about this song is being able to add those slight influences throughout the song. So I'd love to show you a little bit about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, break it down for us.
Okay. So it's pretty simple, pretty basic. Like this. It's got a little shuffle to it. Now here's the fun part. You can add little fills in there. And you can kind of go here, a little give and take.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the idea of the song. We wanted it to be
Nice.
simple in order for us to put a few little fills in there.
Could you take a couple of those little riffs and just slow them down, simplify it, so that anybody watching could maybe just learn one at a time and start trying to incorporate them here and there in their own playing?
Totally. So a riff that I like to use in a song like this, especially when there's a little bit of a shuffle, is kind of go, you're kind of doing like a little bit of sus up and down. So, like that. And using passing notes. So notes that aren't exactly in the key, but you're just kind of passing through them. So I know that might seem like a lot, but just practice simple triad shapes. So that was one little technique. Another one is kind of like doing a melody. So it's got that swung feel.
Right, right.
So one of the things I wanted to mention as well is whenever you're approaching a song like this where you can incorporate a gospel feel and just slight little tweaks, what I like to think about is like we're tilting the needle. We're tilting the needle away from contemporary music and we're going into more of a gospel bluesy genre. And that's good, but you always have to keep in mind, you can't stay here. You gotta bring it back. So that's my philosophy of 5, 6. Just keeping it in the pocket. 3, 4, 5, 6. Those little touches, I'm tilting the needle, and then I'm coming back into what's north.
That's awesome. So why don't you then take us a little bit further into this song as it sort of starts off contemporary worship, and then you start to lean heavier and heavier into the gospel influence. Where does it end up? Because this is where I think it gets really, really cool.
So we go into this like reprise, and this is where we get to really get into some gospel-like chords, some of the feel. So kind of on and on and on we go, and
Nice.
we really kind of go out of the mode and we start borrowing some chords from different modes.
Okay, so first off, that's a super fun part. And this reprise moment on this song is absolutely killer. You've got a Hammond organ in there. It's really dialed in and the band's sounding great. But if somebody's watching this video feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all that, there's a lot more of knowledge that needs to be built up to get to that place, right?
Yeah.
So what was your guys' path to bringing this texture into this song like as a church to start pulling in gospel influences? Could you just share a little bit about what that process looked like for you? Because I think that if somebody watching this is coming from a background where they play contemporary worship music, that might feel like there's some barriers there.
Yeah.
How do you approach sort of starting that process?
Well, we number one want to keep it authentic. If it was a place to go, we wanted to authentically say like, yeah, this is in us. I think that that's so important. I think this is where we get into the topic of making sure it's not tokenism,
Right.
but that this is like, if this is something that we truly value, if being diverse as the body of Christ, but also being diverse musically is a value, then we need to lean into that, and we need to embrace it and make room for it. So it was a conscious decision of, if we're gonna go there, let's really go there.
Right. And I would imagine took on some effort, some intentional work to build that musical vocabulary, to understand modal interchange and
Yes.
these concepts that are fundamental to a gospel musician's vocabulary, but somebody who plays CCM or contemporary worship might not automatically be able to hear those swaps, those color chords, and comprehend them.
Right.
So you guys as a team sort of started to tackle this together as something that was a big part of what you wanted to bring and what you were valuing as a band?
That's
Nice.
right.
Okay. So what would you say to a worship leader or a music director who maybe likes the idea of being able to sound like that?
Yeah.
Like with these really exciting, really complex musical concepts. I find gospel music really inspiring to listen to. What would you say to somebody who likes the idea but has no idea where to start?
Yeah. Number one, immersion. So really dig into the culture of gospel music. There's many different genres even within gospel, but I would say start from really classic church gospel music and really dig into that. And of course, there's modern expressions of what's out there. We're all familiar with Maverick City, where they have done, I think, a good job of bringing in a different flavor and turning the worship genre, so to speak, on its head at times. But I think immersion is so important. So
artists like Fred Hammond.
Oh, you can't get Kirk Franklin is even fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of historical gospel artists that I would recommend that you check out.
So then from there, you start just noticing things you're hearing like, oh, I don't understand what I just heard, but I heard it on this other gospel song too. You start to see like, oh, it feels this way.
Right.
Like hit that one chord that's not a one chord, right? That right there. What's the regular one chord? Like there we are, and then we just right back to that feels different. You don't need to understand the theory behind it to understand how that feels.
Right.
And as you're starting to listen to gospel music and you're feeling that happen across this song and then that song, you say, oh, that hits kind of the same way. Let me then start to understand what's going on musically behind that. What's the theory? What's the history behind that feel? And then you can start to tap into it with some, not just head knowledge, but some like emotional investment of like, oh, I'm not just learning new chords for the sake of it, but I'm going after something that's authentic, that resonates with me musically, that has history behind it.
Right. And I think when you immerse yourself into a genre, like any genre, but like gospel music, when you immerse yourself, get into the culture, read up about it, and begin to study different artists, you begin to grow in appreciation. And appreciation, that's a great place to play from, because you're not just trying to tickle everyone's ear and show you how fancy you can be. It's actually coming from a place more than knowledge. It's coming from a place of heart and appreciation.
So use the word immersion, right? Being willing to really dive into the genre, getting familiar with some of the classic artists, really trying to understand the feelings that are evoked by these different chords and different ideas. To me, it feels like you really have to be willing to put in the effort and be a student again for a while. I think if you've been playing contemporary worship for a while, it can start to feel like you can just sit into any song, you sort of understand a lot of the ideas, the ingredients. With gospel, it can feel like you're starting all over from scratch. But if that's something that's important to your team, there's not really any shortcut to that, right? It just takes time, it takes intentionality, and your heart has to be in it. Right. Here's another thing that you might consider doing. Ask your pastor or the worship leader, hey, is it okay if I take a Sunday off? Find a church in your area that plays gospel music predominantly, and just go participate in their worship service so you can experience it for yourself. You might not understand everything that's happening musically. Like you played that reprise, and I can hear it, I can feel it, but I don't know exactly what's going on. I'd have to study it for a while. But I can definitely feel it. It takes me somewhere that I really enjoy. So if there's a church in your neighborhood that plays gospel music, just go check it out for yourself. Be a student. Enjoy worship with their community and see how it feels. From there, then you can be inspired and start chasing after this in your own congregation.
Yeah, and I think it's about building bridges too, right? We're not just having separate kingdoms, but build a bridge with that particular worship leader or church. And you'll be amazed at the collaboration that will come from that.
And I would imagine if you go to a solid church and you just walk up to the keys player afterwards, you say, man, I really appreciated what you did today. I found it inspiring. This is something that I really value. And just share your heart. Maybe that will turn out being a relationship that wouldn't have built otherwise if you wouldn't have taken the time to step back from what you're doing and just sit under another ministry.
That's good.
So we'll put a link in the description, guys, so you can check out this song, Awaken the Anthem by New Life Worship. You're going to see everything we just talked about practically applied from this very simple beginning to this amazing reprise. You've got to watch all the way through to the end and see how it comes together. Seth, I really appreciate you taking the time to share not just the practical stuff, but some of the heart that went into it as well. Really appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, David.
See you in the next video.